Alright, everybody, welcome back to Major Movies and TV, and today we're going to be talking about the new Netflix series that just dropped recently called Oddballs. I had no inclination of watching this show up until last night. I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. It looks kind of interesting. It looks different. And let's try to support some animation, considering all the stuff that's been going on with cartoons and everything. It's good to support animation, and I really hope that more animation makes it into the mainstream because, or at least back into the mainstream, because cartoons have just been falling off lately, especially kids' cartoons. I remember back in the day watching everything on Nickelodeon, Disney, and Cartoon Network, just flipping between those three channels, and the cartoons on all of them were great. But nowadays, Cartoon Network has like one original cartoon, Craig of the Creek, and that's it. And it's kind of sad, you know? Like what are these kids watching nowadays? Like, that's kind of the, like, no wonder why kids aren't kids anymore. They don't get to watch anything. They don't get to actually watch shows that, like, promote using their imagination or anything like that. They don't get weird enough, or they don't, like, I don't know. They also, like, I remember being a kid watching shows and I actually felt something. Like, the shows made me feel emotions. Nowadays, it's all just stupidness. No wonder why the kids are kind of dumb, to say the least. They're not actually being, like, given the opportunity to be more mature for their age. So yeah. But this show in particular, no, it's not like a super emotional kid show, you know, and I'm not saying every cartoon has to be emotional or mature, but it can't be completely like 2-year-old level dumbness trying to target itself towards 10-year-olds. It just don't work like that. Luckily, this show is well written and honestly more adult than I was expecting. It's a kid's show. It definitely is a kid's show, but the themes of the episodes, the stories that play out, everything about it, it's not dumb. It's weird, it's wacky, but it's not dumb. Everything makes sense. It's not random trash. It's just weird, and it's different, and it's cool. But it's not random, just for the sake of being weird and random. The main shows that I can, like, compare this show to is, like, The Amazing World of Gumball. Maybe it seems like a show that would have been either on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network in near the 2010s. Like, it's like that regular show, Amazing World of Gumball type of thing, where the episodes are really weird. The world that they're in has, like, no rules, you know, but like, as to what can happen, but it doesn't go completely off the rails, you know? Everything makes sense within the show. I think Amazing World of Gumball and regular show are the best shows to compare this show to. I don't think it's on the level of those two shows, but it is pretty close. It's pretty up there. This is a very well-made cartoon. The animation looks great in this show. It's kid-like, but not like Teen Titans Go or like Wee Baby Bear. Honestly, Wee Baby Bears, that one's that's a super kid show, but like the animation actually looks really good in that show. No, I'm talking like it's not like overly simplified, you know? So with this show, I guess this was started by a YouTuber named The Odd Ones Out. I don't know. I think that's just one person. And he voices James, one of the main characters of the show. And this was started on YouTube and actually I think, pitched to Netflix and made into a real show. So that's really cool. And I mean, and that should give up and coming, like, people that want to get into animation, you can do it on your own and be independent and then get someone else to help you with it, you know? I feel like that's, like, really cool. I really want to support especially independent animators like Odd Ones Out, apparently, because he did his thing and made it, sort of. He got his show on Netflix, and hopefully it gets renewed for another season. I think this could be a very solid kids show, especially for Netflix standards. You know, Netflix doesn't have the best, like, kids show, like, original, you know, playlist there or whatever. They have, I don't really watch the kids shows on there, but this was the first one I think that really intrigued me as an adult, which is, you know, kind of cool. So yeah, I think this is a solid show, definitely reminiscent of 2010's Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. I'm gonna talk about spoilers for this show. I'm not gonna do a non-spoiler review. If you want to watch it without knowing what happens, go watch it, I guess. But the episodes are, like, contained stories for each episode. There's very little that actually connects between the episodes. So, like, it's a very basic show. I don't think I'm really spoiling it for anyone, you know what I'm saying? But just so you know, I'm going to be talking about spoilers for most of the episodes. I'm not going to go over like a synopsis for every single episode, because there's like 12 episodes, and you don't really need to know exactly what happens in each episode. You just need to know the overall, like, arching themes of the show. So this show follows these characters. James, he's like this white, like, puffball dude played by the Odd Ones Out, or voiced by him. Then there's Max, who is this genetically engineered crocodile dude who was raised like a normal kid, and he's voiced by Julian Gant. And then Kimberly Brooks plays a character named Echo, who is a girl from the future where food is, like, not really edible anymore or something like that. Like, they don't really have good food. They got rid of preservatives and everything. So she's come back from the future to eat food, essentially. So yeah, she's like this time traveling girl. Yeah, and she comes in, like, a couple episodes into the season and then becomes, like, a main character, which is cool. The three main characters are fun. Was it Max the crocodile? He's very, like, I like what they do with his animation throughout the show, because he'll, like, get, like, super intense, like emotionally or something, or, like, super, like, ADHD or whatever, and his animation style will change. It'll look like a real crocodile instead of the cartoon version. It's funny, you know. It's like this super, like, suspenseful, like, close up on his face where he actually looks like a real crocodile with, like, bumps on his skin, everything. It's entertaining. I like how the animation changes sometimes. There are other characters in the show. I can't remember all of their names, but there's this one bully character who's like this green blob that shows up sometimes. There's an emo unicorn girl that shows up every once in a while. But other than that, that's the main cast is James, Max, and Echo. The parents show up sometimes. All the parents of the kids are like scientists, which was interesting. James and Max's parents are both scientists. They're neighbors. They work in a lab and everything like that. So yeah, the show is pretty funny. It's got some decent, like, meta humor that I wasn't expecting. We'll go over a couple of the episodes just to, like, go over them. But it's not going to be as detailed as I usually go because, there's not a lot that happens. It's just kind of random stuff that happens. So, Oddballs. And it's pretty cool. It's made it in the top 10 on Netflix as a kids TV show, so that's pretty cool. With the first episode, alright, so it's called Raising Toasty, and pretty much they bring this toaster to life, okay? And this is actually one of the important parts of the story that they're going with for this show, is they bring this toaster to life with an AI chip from their super enhanced fridge because they wanted to make perfect toast. And this toaster comes to life, they start raising it like a child, but Max and James have like two completely different versions of how to raise a child. So they fight with each other on how to do it. Max grew up in a lab where he didn't feel loved. And then James, had like a overly loving family. So he, or like an overly loving sense of how to parent. So, Toasty becomes, like, super confused and angry, goes on a rampage, destroys the town, like, flings burning toast everywhere, and then they eventually stop Toasty, but then turns out at the end of the episode they're still alive. And this was a solid episode, and it's a good starting point to show how random and weird this show is gonna be. And Toasty is, Toasty won't show up again until the last episode or isn't mentioned again, but he has an important part of the story, ironically. Breaking and Entering is episode 2. Oh, so this is the episode where James's mom, in order to teach him a lesson, turns him into a smartphone, like combines his DNA with a smartphone, and says if you don't break yourself by the end of the day, you can get a smartphone. And he's like, all right, yeah, no, I could do that. And then near the end of the day, he high fives Max and breaks his arm, and he has to get himself fixed. And by the end of it, he's like this melted thing, but then he's able to get himself fixed. And yeah, he convinces his mom, but then his mom at the end is like, oh, it looks like you have some water damage. And he's like, no, that's not water damage. I just got melted, chewed, cracked and everything else today, but no water. And she's like, oh, well, now you're not getting a phone. He's like, oh, that sucks. And that's this thing with this show is they actually say, like, that sucks a couple times. It's not, like, super kiddie, And granted, sucks is not, like, a hardcore swear, but still, usually you don't want your kid going, like, oh, that sucks, But, you get the idea of what I'm saying. Wanted Dead or Fly was episode 3, and this one was pretty funny because they have a teacher named Mr. McFly, and he's a giant talking fly, and they kill a fly at the beginning of the episode, and then Mr. McFly is like, oh, my grandma's been missing, so they think they killed his grandma, and then they go bury the fly, and then, like, they're on this, like, nervous tirade where, they're like, oh, I committed murder, what do? I killed his grandma, and then they kill more, and then Max kills more flies, and he's like, oh my god, I just killed 8 of them, and they're freaking out because they think they killed Mr. McFly's family. And then by the end, Max, like, rats out. They find out that, the flies weren't a part of Mr. McFly's family. And then Max rats out James, though, still thinking they killed his family. And then James is, like, in jail for, like, a day. And he turns into, like, this super buff, full-grown person in one day of jail. And I thought that was kind of funny. But then gets set free, obviously. Episode 4 is called Line Cutters. This is where they introduce Echo. Pretty much they're waiting because there are these ribs that have been supposedly been cooking for 100 years, and they're finally done and being released, and they're supposed to be like the best ribs ever. And then James and Max are at the front of the line because they camped there, but then Echo appears from the future and cuts them in line, and then they're like, oh, you're not gonna cut us. Cutters are like the worst parts of society. And then but then they end up in the back of the line because I forgot how, but they ended up in the back of the line, and then they can't get back to the front of the line because this super security guard named Roxanne, she's like this reoccurring security guard everywhere, is just a giant rock. And there was this funny scene in this episode where they're like, oh, we'll play, she needs rock, paper, she loves rock, paper, scissors, Roxanne. So James plays rock, paper, scissors with her, and she can only play rock. She only plays rock. So he's like, he plays scissors, they're trying to play rock, paper, scissors to get back to the front of the line, or Roxanne can kick them out if they lose. And he plays scissors. And then they get kicked out, and his explanation was like, well, I assumed that she would know that I would know that she would know I would do paper, so I did scissors in order to, I'm playing 4D chess, and then Echo's like, well, she's playing rock, paper, scissors, so I like that scene. I like the comedy. It's very, sarcastic and fun. But then what they do is James, Max, and Echo distract Roxanne or whatever, and then they get into the tent where the ribs are. They start eating the ribs, and then turns out the chefs are alien flies for some reason, and they're trying to eat people by getting them into the tent with the ribs. And it's funny because they're dressed as Gordon Ramsay, and every time the main chef fly says something, the others are like, yes, chef. I was like, oh, that's funny. So they make a lot of meta references in the show. It's entertaining. But yeah, so that happens. They beat the flies because Echo has this little bird that comes out of her backpack that shoots lasers. So I was like, all right, that's interesting. And then, they end up eating the ribs. So that's that. Episode 5 is Boy with Two Brains. This is where the bully character is introduced, this giant green blob that's this proud bully. And turns out, and then he goes into James's body and takes over his mind. And then, because James, the bully was bullying the teacher, and then James saved him, so the teacher gives him a nicest person trophy, and James is all happy about it, even though, so at the beginning of the episode, they had to make all the lockers smaller in order to make a bigger trophy case because everyone had participation trophies. And he was going off about it. He's like, oh, why does everyone get a participation trophy? They make trophies less valuable when everyone could get one for anything. And I think he was right. I don't know if that was supposed to be serious or sarcastic, but I've never been a fan of the participation trophies, and don't try to think I'm some old head. I'm 22 years old. Okay, I got participation trophies, and they never made me feel good about myself. So yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, so that happens, and then the blob bully dude, I forget his name. But he goes inside of James and takes over his body and makes him do not nice things in order to make him lose his trophy. And then by the end, they have to do this bully exorcism where and they have to they have to figure out what makes the bully want to be a bully. And then turns out James is alright, he just wants to be recognized for something. So he recognizes him for being the best bully. He gives him a fake trophy for best bully, and then he leaves him alone. And then at the end of the episode, they're like, did I just give someone a reward for bullying? And then the episode just ends. I was like, alright, that was a funny joke. I got that. Next episode is Emo Like the Wolf Stank. So this episode was interesting. Pretty much in their school, they have this club called the over emotional club or controlled emotion club that Max is a part of, and so pretty much they try to be as emotional as possible, and it's like a sport. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And what happens is James is like looking for his own special thing for like him as a person. And what happens is James like finds deodorant and he puts it on his face, and it makes him cry a ton. So people are like, oh, you can be in the over emotional club. You can help us win this year, because there's this kid from another school called Smooth Jason, and he always wins every year, and he's like this anime kid that is able to like shed one tear and make everyone faint. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's funny. And then Roxanne is the ref here for this. And so they go through like these challenges, and Max used to be the like top guy when it came to this. He was always the over emotional one, and he's mad that James is essentially cheating in order to get ahead of Max, not maliciously, but you know. And then James is like going against Smooth Jason. They end up in like this hug war, or like this hug battle where they have to like hug each other and make everyone else cry. And it's like this anime thing. It's interesting. It's really funny. I liked it. But so James ends up admitting that he's a cheater, but then they also find out that Smooth Jason is a cheater, and then they both get disqualified, but then the coach gets like really upset because they didn't win, and then they end up winning. It was a kind of a weird ending, but that's that episode. And I'm just going over these episodes really quickly to give you guys like this idea of what the show is about without going too much into too much detail, just so you can kind of get the idea. I might skip ahead a little bit. Episode 7, pretty much Echo is just like a mess. Like she just makes a mess wherever she goes, and she's staying with James. He's tired of her making a mess and leaving it everywhere. But by the end, and then they get into a fight about, so James won't actually tell her that he doesn't like that she's making a mess, and the whole episode is just about like expressing your emotions about something if you don't like something. And then by the end of the episode, it turns out that Echo is a mess because she makes messes because in the future they just vaporize all their trash all at one time, and it takes them 2 seconds to clean up. So, and James obviously didn't know that, and she was like, well, if you would have just asked me, I would have just cleaned it up in 2 seconds. And then she ends up destroying all of his stuff in the process, because during the episode, James is like, well, I've become a minimalist now. I don't need all my stuff. So she takes all of his stuff. And then at the end of the episode, she still considers all of his stuff her stuff, and then just vaporizes it all. So she's like, so yeah, James was not happy about that. But then continuity doesn't matter. In the next episode, he has all of his stuff back. And then in this episode, Pillow Fight Club, the parents are like, oh, we gotta keep our kids safe, so we don't allow them to do any risky activity. So they pretty much start this like Pillow Fight Club as like a secret where they can let out all their energy, because if they don't, Max will turn into like this giant crocodile monster because he can't have fun. So they start this Pillow Fight Club. It turns into like this whole thing with the whole school. Everyone's just pillow fighting the whole time. And then like it turns into this underground thing, and they make it's a reference to Fight Club because they're like, one rule about Pillow Fight Club is you don't talk about Pillow Fight Club. So, that was kind of funny. By the end of the episode, Max gets kidnapped by the scientist who keeps, saying, oh, kids shouldn't be risky. He turns into this giant angry alligator, destroys everything, and then they kind of go back to normal by the end of the episode. So, that was interesting. Episode 9 is called Grandma's Boy. Essentially, James gets a gift from Grandma in the mail every year for his birthday or whatever, and it's always the same thing, a hoop with a stick. And turns out that James's parents hired this robot 3D printer grandma to be James's grandma, and he keeps getting a hoop with a stick because they never told this AI grandma what he likes, so she just prints out hoop and stick because that's what she was hired to do, or created to do. So James spends the day with her in order for her to learn what he actually likes and dislikes, and they pretty much just go on this huge adventure. They learn things about each other. They make jokes where this dude they were in the park, and and on the park bench it said in memory of Austin Mahone or something, and they're and James was like, oh well, why get a bench, why not get a statue, that's lame. And then turns out that the dude's not actually dead. So that was kind of interesting. It's a joke that throughout the episode, there's a part where this skater dude brings this boombox into the park and scares everyone away with his loud music, and then James is like, who has the audacity to come into a park and change the whole soundtrack? And I'm like, all right, that's funny, and it's true, people just walk around blaring music for no reason. But yeah, so that's and then by the end of the episode, the 3D printer grandma prints him out a statue, and he likes it and everything. So that's that episode. Episode 10 is called Blood Excuse. Pretty much, this is kind of funny because the gym teacher is this lady who's super into squats. She's like, all you need in life is squats. You're gonna do squats and her legs are huge, and her upper body is nothing. It's funny. But James obviously doesn't want to do squats, so what he learns is that he can get out of gym class by donating blood at the blood drive at school. And so he does that, and he likes it so much that he doesn't have to go to gym class. He keeps doing it, and he eventually gives so much blood that he looks like an old man, and people keep mistaking him for an old man. They give him the senior discount and everything. So he ends up in a nursing home, and he likes the nursing home. He loves it. He's like, oh, I'll be an old man forever, I don't care. And the only thing that stops him is Smooth Jason from the episode with the emo, the wolf stank, that from episode 6. He makes a comeback, but now he's old man Jason, or wrinkly Jason, and he's wooing over all the old people, and then James and him get into a fight, and it's James ruined his life. And by the end of the episode, James has to make this choice. He's like, oh, you can either report me as a fake old person, or you can save all these other old people from this bingo, this ball full of bingo balls that's about to fall on him. He's like, you can't do both at the same time. So James chooses to save the old people, and he has to do this Kamehameha squat. Like, he has to, like, his legs turn into, like, giant tree stalks. And he's like, oh, and he lifts up the bingo ball, and he learns that, because at the beginning of the episode, he's like, when do I ever need to do a squat? I never need to do a squat in real life. And then he's like, oh, all right, I guess I had to do a squat there. And then the episode pretty much just ends with him, you know, learning his lesson, I guess, and then going back to gym. And then the gym teacher's like, oh, now push-ups are the thing. And she has, like, giant arms now. Yeah. So, that's episode 10. Episode 11, Almost Home Alone. This one was probably one of the more entertaining. I like this one just because of how weird the villain is. But, so James essentially is, like, super stressed out about school and everything. And then he believes that his parents, like, left him home alone, you know, on a school day. So he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to school then. I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to do whatever I want. And he's, like, going through his day trying to do the things that he wants to do. But the salesman keeps showing up at his door. And he won't leave him alone. He keeps coming back no matter how many times James tells him to go away. And it's to sell this security system. And then finally, James is like, all right, whatever, you can install it. I thought this was kind of a funny joke. He's like, oh, I already installed it like hours ago. I knew you'd say yes. And then, so that happens. And then James is like, well, I'm not gonna, you know, I can't pay for this. I don't. So, the in the contract that James signs, it says that the seller can take the house if they don't pay for the security thing. So he ends up trying to take control of the house using the security program, and then James has to fight back against it. You know, the cameras shoot lasers and everything like that. And the seller in this episode is entertaining, but what happens by the end of the episode is James is able to destroy the control panel and send the guy away. And then at the end of the episode, the parents come home to a destroyed house, and they're like, oh, you're going to have to clean all this. And he's like, I didn't even get to do what I want on my day off from school. And they're like, it's Saturday. And turns out he didn't even have school, so, you know. And then the last episode, Nugget Nonsense, pretty much what happens is James wants to get dino nuggets from the shop or the restaurant that he normally goes to, but then he finds out that the shop owner won't sell dino nuggets to any kid that's over 10 years old, and he's over 10, so he can't buy dino nuggets, so Echo pays like this girl to buy them nuggets, and then they go and clone one of the nuggets, but Max's crocodile DNA gets mixed in with the nuggets when they were cloned, and they turn into giant dinosaur nuggets that are like actually dinosaurs that are trying to eat them. So they get chased through the town with the dino nuggets, and then they eventually defeat the dino nuggets. This one it didn't have a whole lot of funny jokes. I mean, it was still funny, but the thing about this episode is, like, the Mr. Toasty that appeared in the first episode, Echo, you know, is talking about, you know, the toaster that destroyed all of the appliances that made good food. And then that caused all the good food in the future to go away. And turns out Mr. Toasty was that appliance that destroyed the other appliances and made good food go away. And turns out, like, James is the creator of the monster from the future. So now Echo's like, well, you have to find Mr. Toasty and destroy him. And then it kind of leaves off on that cliffhanger of, oh, you know, Mr. Toasty is like this overarching villain, apparently. This evil toaster that wants to destroy everything. So yeah, that's like a very quick, undetailed rundown of the whole series. I didn't want to go into detail of every single episode. I'm sure there are funny moments I definitely skipped over that I did enjoy about this show. This show is entertaining. The animation is done very well. They change up the animation style throughout the show. They make funny meta jokes that aren't cringy. They're not stupid. Like, they're meta and they're actually entertaining. So I highly suggest having your kid watch this show if they want a new show to watch. You know, if you have Netflix, put this on for your kid and they'll probably like it. It's entertaining, but it's not stupid. It's good for kids, but it's not dumb. I was able to watch this show, be entertained by it, appreciate the world that was created within the show. The characters aren't annoying. They're actually, decent characters. Even James, even though he's like over the top, he's not annoying. Max, same thing. He's over the top, but he's not annoying. So that's good. And again, the animation is done well. So shout out to Odd Ones Out for making this a series that's actually pretty decent, and I feel like it has a lot of room to grow. And I feel like it's definitely reminiscent of 2010's Cartoon Network, where it's kind of random, but the randomness has an overarching theme to it, and there's a whole world that they can explore. And I think if they do a season 2, they can explore this world more and bring in more to it, This definitely feels like a setup season for something better later on, which, you can say the same about season 1 of regular show, An Amazing World of Gumball. They were kind of setup seasons to get you into this world of craziness, So I definitely do enjoy this show. I highly recommend it, especially if you have kids. But yeah, alright. So that'll be it for this review. I definitely did miss some jokes here and there, but you get the idea. It's a very weird random show, but it's pretty good. So if you have any thoughts of your own, leave them down in the comments below. Let me know if you like the show, and that'll be it. Have a good day.